Hello, people. I finished a book. It is the second volume of South Africa and the Transvaal War. I got 4 more of these, but I'm taking a little break because I've had just about enough of the jingoism in this book. This volume was actually a little bit better than the first volume, only because it had some pretty cool first-hand accounts. Very nice first-hand accounts. This is volume 2. I think this first note here is going to be an example of the jingoism. And it looks like that says page 2. I don't remember having something on page 2. But there it is. Near the bottom. Yeah, this is kind of an example of how this guy writes. There's multiple paragraphs like this throughout the book. This isn't even the entire paragraph. This is just a portion of it. All Her Majesty's dominions, on which the sun never sets, were at this critical moment holding hands in a wide circle that encompassed the earth, and the picture of the small mother country with all her big children gathered around her in her hour of need was not one that the romance of history can afford to disregard. That's the kind of crap that I got to put up with in this book. When, her hour of need is a whole bunch of get-rich-quick people in another country that are trying to get the right to vote, and the other country is not giving them the right to vote because they know that they'll vote in outlanders. And I have the hanging written down here. And that is something that should have been in the first volume, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video, but the British hung some boar for something. I can't remember what. I can't remember the name of the boar. And that was another one of the incidents that precipitated the Second Boer War. And there's no mention of it in either one of these volumes. Bottom of 49, top of 50. And this is at the Siege of Ladysmith. And I think I talked about this maybe in that first video, I don't know, but how Ladysmith got its name was very, very interesting. Guy named Smith, it's like Sir Harry Smith, named it after his wife. This guy Smith had been, not only did he fight in South Africa during the frontier wars. I don't think he was alive during the Second Boer War, but he fought there during the frontier wars. He fought in what they call the Peninsula, and whenever they talk about the Peninsula, that is a Napoleonic term for British troops that fought in Spain. And Sir Harry Smith was also one of the redcoats that sat down to a prepared dinner in the White House in Washington, D.C. before they lit the curtains on fire and shit. He had quite the career. Okay, let's get to what I'm supposed to be reading here. We were all taken prisoners, together with the Gloucester Regiment and a battery of mounted artillery. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Which accounts for us being in Pretoria so soon. As we were going up the hill in the dark, a small party of Boers dashed through our ammunition mules, causing them to stampede. And this is a battle. They're trying to get to the relief of Ladysmith, is what it is. And there's a whole bunch of these first-hand accounts, and they all talk about this stampede of mules. It's funny. By this move, we lost all our mules, 200 in all, and with them all our ammunition and artillery. You don't know what it means shooting a boar. He is behind a rock, and all you can ever see is his rifle sticking out. For the last hour of the fight, I had a rifle and ammunition, which I took from a dead man, and blazed away for all I was worth. Then we fixed bayonets and prepared for a rush, when the ceasefire was sounded. Our senior captain has told me that my name has been mentioned to our colonel, who was commanding the force, as having caused a lot of men to rally. We were all then taken prisoners, except 2 officers killed and 8 wounded, and marched to the Boer lager, and sent off that night to a station 20 miles distant in wagons. While we were in their lager, they treated us extremely well and gave us food and tobacco. All you read about the Boers in England is absolutely untrue. They are most kind to the wounded and prisoners, looking after them as well as their own wounded. And anything they've got, they will give you if you ask them, even if they deprive themselves. We came up to Pretoria in first-class sleeping carriages, and the way they treated us was most considerate, feeding us and giving us coffee every time we stopped. The day we arrived, we took up quarters in the race course, but we have been moved to a fine brick building with baths, electric lights, etc. They provide us with everything from clothes down to toothbrushes. They also feed us, and we are constantly getting presents of vegetables and cigars from private people. In fact, we can have everything we like except our liberty. For some reason or other, they won't at present give us parole, and we are surrounded by sentries. There are close upon 50 officers in this building, and they have got any amount of wounded ones in different places. They say they won't exchange the officers at any price. And that's what he's talking about when he says parole. They would exchange prisoners. And back in those days, they would actually make you sign something saying that you won't fight in this war again, and they'd turn you loose. They did that in Napoleonic days. They did that in the American Revolution. They did that in 1812. You would just sign something, and for the most part, people would obey those oaths that they had signed. Second first-hand account, page 105, and this is when the British are trying to force the Modder River, and things have really not even gotten bad for them yet. The Black Week has not started yet, but this volume does cover portions of the Black Week. Second first-hand account. We had no cover except little scrub bushes about 6 inches high, and the ground sloped gently down to the Boers from about 2,000 yards. I don't suppose troops have ever been in a more damnable position. I sat up occasionally to see how things were going, but only for a moment, as it was always the signal for a perfect storm of bullets. My ammunition bearer had his head blown to bits by a 1-pound shell from a 37mm Maxim, a most damnable gun. I happened to be in the line of it just before dark, and they pumped 6 rounds at me. The first 4 pitched in a line about 20, 10, 15, and then the 4th just 4 yards in front of me, and threw dirt all over me. And the next 2 just pitched behind me. I didn't like it a bit. It was the worst day I have ever spent in my life. 12 hours under a constant and heavy fire of Maxims, 12-pounders, and other quick-firing guns and rifles. A hot sun, no cover, no water, and no food is more than enough for yours truly. The guns yesterday fought magnificently, and I believe fired more rounds per gun than I have ever been fired in a battle before. We had a lovely wash this morning. I washed dirt and drawers besides myself. I wanted it. My clothes have not been off since we left the Orange River on November 21st. Cronje and Stein are said to have both been present at the battle. At this point in the war, you have kind of fixed battles. The Boers dig in, they build fortifications, they fight. It's kind of trench warfare, and the British are kind of marching right at it. At least they're not wearing red coats. They're wearing khaki, but that's the form that the war is taking. And after this Battle of Modder River, it gets even worse, and you get to the thing called the Black Week. My next note there is Churchill with the armored train. He does go into Winston Churchill being taken captive. Churchill is on this armored train, and the Boer derail the thing. And there's this short battle. Some of the British are killed, and some of them are taken prisoner. Winston Churchill is not in uniform. He is a war correspondent. He is not enlisted in the army. But Churchill has a sidearm, and he fires at the Boer with a pistol. As soon as Churchill is taken prisoner, he says, look, you ought to just release me because I'm a war correspondent. He argues very vociferously about this. Churchill is actually lucky that he wasn't stood up against a wall and shot, because, I mean, that's what you do with partisans or with people that are not in uniform that fire at you. You know, in the middle of a war, you can't have that kind of thing going on. He's very lucky. Then I got Magers, Fontaine, and Colenso written down there. And I don't have anything to read there, but Magers, Fontaine was another battle that was kind of like the same way. This author claims they lost Magers, Fontaine because of treachery, when actually the Boers just switched up their tactics a little bit and the British walked right into another ambush. Colenso was even worse. The Boers were very heavily dug in, and they also have a river that they were defending, and the British attack it frontally, and they are not able to, it ends up being a disaster. They lose a bunch of guns and everything. So I am taking a break. I'm reading something different. I got 4 more of these to read, and it's actually a nice day in Florida. It's a little bit cool outside. Thanks for watching.